Welcome to another video from Howard Piano Industries. Today we're going to be showing you how to bore a hole in a replacement hammer. We're going to show you on a vertical piano hammer, but it's basically the same process for a grand piano hammer as well. And so this is if you buy a replacement hammer because it broke or get lost or whatever. All our hammers come on board, so we're showing you this video today so that you can know how to bore the hole in the hammer so that it is at the right bore distance and angle and everything for the hammer you're replacing. So here we've got a replacement hammer. What I took here, this is the old hammer, and I took this off. This is kind of supposed to be representing the hammer next to the one that's broken, which we'll kind of use as a guide for boring and everything for the distance and angle for the new hammer. So that's why it's good to make sure you take the old one off that's next to it so you can use that as a guide. Now what you do when you order a hammer is you get one, because they're not all the same size, is you get one that's similar in size to the one that you're needing to replace. Okay, and the way, the old ones, some of the felt might be gone. This is like from a really old piano, so the hammers are in pretty rough shape. But basically, you look at the width across the face of the hammer. Okay, so we're gonna measure it like across the face of the hammer like that, and this one we can see is about 7/8 of an inch. Okay, so at the widest point of the hammer, you want to get something to match. So that's what this one is. They're pretty close to the same size and as far as across the face of it. Now this one's got more felt on the crown because this one's worn out, but what we're going to do is, what you want to do is you want to drill the hole so that the shank comes up into the part of the hammer, so that the two faces, the face of the new hammer is going to be lined up with the face of the old hammer. Okay, and that will be determined by where you drill the hole. Okay, you've got a block here that you can, and if you do it further back, then it's going to put the hammer further forward. If you do it further up here, then it's going to make the hammer further back. So you want to line it up. So the way you do that, and make sure you're determining the right bore placement, is we're going to take and measure the distance from the crown, or the strike point, I should say, on the hammer that of our sample hammer that we're using as a guide, to the middle of the shank. Okay, so we're going to go from here all the way to about there. Okay, so right about where the middle of the shank would fall up into. Okay, and I'm going to measure that. I measured it before. I think it was about 60 millimeters. You can do inches if you want, but so yeah, so it's about 60 millimeters. Okay, so what I'm going to do then, I'm going to take a pencil, and I'm going to measure 60 millimeters on my new hammer from the strike point. The strike point, of course, is where the point that the hammer strikes the string, and I'm going to measure 60 millimeters. Okay, and I'm going to mark that with a pencil. So I'm going to mark that here, 60 millimeters. Okay, you want to try to get as accurate as you can, and then I'm going to mark it on the other side too, and then I'm going to draw a line across. Let me do it this way, 60. Okay, and then I'm going to take the 2 points, and draw a line connecting them across the part of the hammer that we're going to be drilling the hole in. Okay, and so that should be 60 millimeters. Okay, and I can check it this way. Okay, so check both sides. Okay, so we got it on at the 60 millimeter point. Now we're going to we want to make sure we do it in the middle. So we're going to take a point, and this this hammer is 10 millimeters wide. So we're going to make another mark on that line at 5 millimeters. So we're doing it right in the middle, okay? Because if the hole isn't centered, then you know, it's gonna rub against the hammers next to it, because it's not gonna be centered between the hammer on either side of it, which can be fixed, but we'd rather do it right the first time. Okay, so there we've got our X or mark there, both in both directions where we're gonna drill our hole. Okay, now there's a couple ways you can do this. If you have a drill press, that's probably the easiest way, so we're going to show you that as well, and that's the main way we're going to show you. But there's another way. If you don't have a drill press and you just have like a regular drill like this, you can still do it. Now the size drill bit that I use, because the shanks of an upright hammer shank, unless you've got a spinet piano which have smaller shanks, but most upright pianos have shanks that are 7/32 of an inch. Okay, so you don't want to use a 7/32 inch drill bit, because then the shank is going to be too tight in the hole, and there won't be any room for the glue, or you know, for wiggle room to get it placed just right. Okay, so I usually use let's see, 15/64. You know, that's as big as you'd want to go. But if you use 15/64, that, and some want to use a little bit smaller drill bit than that. But for me, that I like that size. It feels pretty good, and gives plenty of room for the glue to fit in the hole with the shank. And so that's what we're going to be using. So what you would do is, if we sell a tool, if you're going to use a drill, this is our hammer bore out guide. Okay, so looks like this, and it's got jaws that can clamp onto the hammer, and then it's got a hole that goes all the way through for the drill bit to go through. So you would clamp it on, and depending on how wide your hammer is, like this one's fairly wide, so but otherwise, you know, it can be clamped if it needs to. If you've got a smaller hammer, it can be clamped to tighten down on top of the hammer. So we're gonna put that on there, and we want to do it so that it lines up with the hole. I don't know if you can see that, but when I look in the hole, I can see that it's right over the X. Okay, when you do that, you want to get that nice and tight, and then you want to line up your guide hammer so that it's right at the right angle. Okay, because in almost all cases the hammer doesn't go directly into, or the shank doesn't go directly into the hammer at a 90-degree angle. You can see that this is at an angle. Okay, so we want to match that angle in order to get so that it matches the other hammers. Okay, so what we'll do is put it like that, and then I'm going to just move this tool a little bit so that the line of it lines up with the shank angle on my guide hammer. So I'm going to move that down a little bit like that. Okay, and so then once you've got that set, now the trick with this part, this is why a drill press is preferable. But once you've got that set up, then you can, making sure that that doesn't move, you can drill your hole down through that, or drill your down through the hole into the hammer. Okay, now of course you want to be careful not to drill all the way through the hammer. Okay, with a upright hammer you don't want to drill all the way through. With a grand hammer, the drill should go all the way through the hammer. So that's the difference between upright hammer and grand hammer. So for an upright, you only want to go in, probably about halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way into the wood, but not all the way through. Okay, so that's basically how you do it without a drill press. Is you use one of these tools. It's kind of hard to get the right angle and everything without the tool, but it is possible. But now, next part we're going to show you is doing it on the drill press. Okay, so we're over here by our drill press, and we've got it set up. I've got my 15/64 inch drill bit in there, and what I'm going to do, I've already marked on, like we showed on the hammer, where the point of the hole is going to go into. Now we're going to make sure our angle is correct, and what I'm going to do here is set it up. I'm going to kind of line up the two hammers so that the strike point is together, and then also I'm just going to check my angle. A lot of times, if you got a flat drill press table like this, setting the hammer, and this will depend on the size of the felt and everything, but you want to do it so that the shank lines up, and you can't see this from the side, but I can do it like this, I guess. Okay, so you want to make sure that you want to do it so that the shank is even with the drill bit. Okay, so because to get an angle, okay, if it's like this, then you're going to have to make an adjustment. You might have to shim underneath the bottom, either the bottom of the molding of the hammer, or underneath the felt of the hammer, to tip it one way or the other, like that. Okay, but this one is pretty good if we just set the hammer flat on the table. Okay, I'm just going to move this over just a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to check my. And one thing that I find easier is using a brad point drill, because you can get it more precise, right? Exactly where that point is that you want the hole to go into. Okay, so I'm going to double check my position. Make sure you don't drill into your finger. I'm going to turn it on. Now, you can use some kind of a guide so you don't go too far. You don't go all the way through the shank, but if you could kind of eye it and go roughly halfway or 2/3 of the way into the hammer molding, that'll work. Okay, now when I did this one, I can see that I was off just a little bit. I wasn't exactly in the center, so it didn't work out as well as I would have liked to, but we can, like I said, we can make adjustments for that when we put the hammer in. So that's how you bore the hole, and then what you do is you glue it onto the shank. If you're using the old shanks, you shouldn't have to trim the shank, but if you're using a new shank, you just trim the hole. And I think we've got another video that shows how to install a new hammer. So that's kind of the process. It's a little bit of careful work, but it's not rocket science. So if you have any questions or want to see all of our other videos, visit our website is howardpianoindustries.com.